I'm here on the set of the Marty Stewart Show with my good friend, Marty Stewart, who is one of the few people that I have ever met who truly shares my deep fascination with music history. I can think of no one who is better qualified to help me to set the record straight once and for all, that the worlds of country music and gospel music overlap in so many ways. Marty, are you ready for this?
Kate hardly wait. Hello, Bill Gaither, my friend.
Good to see you.
Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Welcome to this set.
Yeah. And in case they're wondering, a lot of this stuff has come from your
Our archives, the collection.
Yeah.
And just about, I look over here and I see Porter Wagner's coat and Hank Snow's coat. Let me see, one of my old suits. I see Flatt and Scruggs and some folk art. Connie Smith, Hank Williams, picture of Jesus. Back here's Rose Mattis, Chief American Horse. Yeah. Truly American. And I want to thank Patrick Gotch. He's the fellow that owns RFD TV because, as you well know, you could not possibly get away with the cross and the American flag and a picture of Jesus and nudie suits all thrown together just everywhere, can you? So it's a wonderful place to come to work.
They are great people, aren't they?
They are wonderful people.
And they've done great for you and your show. I watch it on Saturday night with Gloria when we're home. I watch it.
When I watch yours too.
and if you're wondering, these two characters, when we get together, it's all about history. You're in country music and me in the gospel field. But you know many of the people in the gospel field.
Well, you know what? I was raised in Mississippi. Yeah. And Mississippi is a wonderful, they call it the birthplace of America's music. And Saturday night was all about country music. During the week was country music, but on Sunday morning it was Jubilee before church. And most of the quartets, that part of the country, most all of the quartets came through our hometown and sang. And I was there. I was there to watch them unload the bus. I was there to buy records at the record table. So I dearly loved those characters just as much as I did country music characters.
And they're the same folks, the same fans. When we stop at the truck stops, the same folks talk to us.
Absolutely.
Who say who their favorite people are. The Boogie Woogie tune that we just did you write that?
Me and cousin Kenny Vaughn wrote that. Now let's take it back to the church. Okay. And back to Mississippi where, they say all things spring from the blues. And whether it's gospel music or country music. But where I first heard the Boogie Woogie proper was, everybody's gonna have religion and glory. Everybody, come on, be singing that story. Everybody's gonna have a wonderful time up there.
Glory, hallelujah.
Better to get the record in the coming in the morning. Well, it gave the piano man a chance to show out and the bass man a show out. But it also was a way to play the Boogie Woogie in church, right?
Right.
Thank you.
1948.
Yeah.
Leroy Abernathy wrote that, and the church, oh my man, they came after him.
I can't imagine.
It said Boogie Woogie in the church, So in the Atlanta Constitution, I have the article where he is defending Boogie Woogie. He says Boogie Woogie means rhythm.
Yes.
It says, and all songs have rhythm. He said, in the garden is a waltz, and he walks with me, and he talks. He said, you can dance to any of those songs. So he said, end of the discussion.
Well, the Boogie Woogie also means joy. Yes, and gospel music to me is about joy a lot of times, and pure inspiration. And so especially when you set it to a story in the Bible, and this was set to the story of Joshua, and going around the wall and taking down the walls of Jericho, so it kind of works.
Why not?
Yeah.
Why not? Cleveland Derricks was probably the first black gospel songwriter in the Southern gospel field.
Is that right?
He came into Mr. Stamps, Virgil Stamps, and said, I've just written this song. Now let us have a little talk with Jesus. Let us have... White groups sang that all over the country. Bluegrass sang it all over the country. The black gospel groups sang it all over the country. Still a great song.
Well, it amazes me. Once a great song, always a great song. Sure. And once a song really touches your heart and goes and finds a place in your heart, it stays forever. Just the first song I ever sang in public was Not My Will. Was it Arthur Smith?
From Charlotte.
From Charlotte.
Not my will, thine be done.
Praise Jesus. And the second song I ever sang and tried to do all the parts when I was a little boy was Just a Little Talk with Jesus.
Just a Little Talk with
Jesus.
And
when the superlatives came together, I finally had all the voices I need to sing Just a Little Talk with Jesus. And I love that song. I just discovered bluegrass music when I was about 12 years old. Really fell in love with the mandolin. And bought a 78 RPM record at a place called Frank Tank Discount Store on the edge of Philadelphia, Mississippi, for 75 cents. And there, on one side was The Wicked Path of Sin, and one was that Monroe wrote, and one was, I believe, the Little Community Church, maybe on the other side. But I fell in love with bluegrass music and kind of put my electric guitar off to the side. And we heard that Bill Monroe was coming to Jackson, Alabama. And my dad took me and a fellow named John Wesley Cook, who was another bluegrass fan, to Jackson.
Where did they play?
At the National Guard Armory with the Sullivan Family Gospel Singers. Full gospel concert, no hats.
Yeah.
And I remember Bill Monroe gave his testimony that night, and he said, Bill Monroe wants to say this. He says, yes, sir. He said, I've never been late for the Grand Ole Opry. I've been there for almost 25 years now, and I've never took a dram of whiskey, and I don't smoke cigarettes, and I've got a good, clear tenor voice. And that was his testimony. And he sang Walking in Jerusalem just like John, and I found a hiding place back to back and tore the place apart. And I saw the light. It was great. It was great.
Marty, you told me of a story of the Native American people up in the Northwest.
The Lakota.
Yeah.
I've always loved Native American people. In my hometown, the Choctaw, Mississippi Band of Choctaws. That's where I met Connie Smith at the show at the Choctaw Fair when I was a kid. But when I was in Johnny Cash's band, he had a heart for the Native American people as well.
You really did.
And I played a benefit concert with him up on Rosebud Indian Reservation, I believe it was. And I asked him, I said, how come we're here? This is in the early 1980s. He said, well, we're here because this is the poorest county in the United States of America. These people need our voice and they need our help. I said, got it. And I fell in love with those people that night, and I've never quit going back. I've been adopted into the tribe. Connie and I were actually married up on Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. Mm-hmm. And we just love those people and have a heart for them. And I find that a Native American person who truly knows Christ, who truly has that combined with that, just the natural gift of just spirituality, it's a mighty deep source.
We have something else in common. We both have great mamas.
You betcha.
Great cooks.
And let me tell you something else. There's another thing that country music performers and gospel music performers have in common. How many? Name an artist or singer or musician can you think back to? It was that mama love and that belief. Sometimes even when daddies didn't believe, but there was something. And sometimes, a lot of times dads did, but that mama love has carried us through a lot, right?
Absolutely. Remember when we were kids, they used to sing a song, Tell Mother I'll Be There in answer to her prayer. I used to sing that, and tears rolled down my face. There's something about mamas, good mamas, and more obviously there's something about, I had a wonderful dad. Interesting, with my mother and father, somebody said, were you scared of your dad? I said, no, I wasn't scared of my dad. I was really frightened with my mom. I got more whippings from my mother than I did, but also that same love. So in a lot of ways, I think they showed the love of Jesus, the being tough as a mountain, and yet they could still flow like a river.
Well, when you finally arrive at the next place, they're already there waiting for you.
They always
and
are.
This song we're about to show, the Gospel Ship, the great old song. But when we were first starting to establish this television show, I had to call every favor in the world. Hey, we're doing a new show. Please come. Yeah. And there was one week I couldn't get anybody to come, so I called and said, Mama, would you come do this show? No. So please, let's do the Gospel Ship. And so Mom and I sat right here in this spot. But it was the same thing you said. In the dressing room, when I was wanting to go over it with her and warm up a little bit, the minute I heard her voice and saw how she touched the guitar, I lost it. I couldn't do it. I hung on for dear life not to just cry because, that's Mama. That's Mama.
What makes artists, it doesn't take them long after they're singing to say, I'd like to write a song that says.
Well, let me tell you, the Fabulous Superlatives, this group was founded on gospel singing. Yeah. Because when we first put the group together, I brought, my bag of country and bluegrass gospel songs to the bus, and the Staple Singers were a big part of the sound that I loved. Harry Stinson brought the Swan Silver Tones. Kenny Vaughan brought folks, and that's how we learned to know each other as people and as singers. Is gospel music. And that's how it happened. And it really got sweet when we started writing our own gospel songs that mattered. And I know that you're a great songwriter, Mr. Songwriter of the Century or whatever. Come on, man. I'm proud of you. We were at our house one day, and we were walking out in the yard, and the First Baptist Church on the corner played Because He Lives. I said, you ought to be ashamed.
We made it with the Baptist.
But we were sitting by a pool in Florida one day, Harry Stinson and I said, I thought about there's a rainbow at the end of every storm. We just wrote a song. And at the end of it, I thought, that's pretty good. Yeah. That's pretty good. And no, not having a clue what the song, the future of it or anything, we just knew it was a good song. And not long after that, Hurricane Katrina wiped out the Gulf Coast, as you remember. And that song was chosen by CNN. It was chosen by radio stations all up and down the coast as a battle cry and a ray of hope in the midst of that storm. And, it's just one of those things that went, thank you.
You put your finger on the right word, hope.
Hope.
We're at a time in our history where we're in desperate need of hope. During the Depression, there were a lot of songs about, in fact, a lot of the early gospel songs, keep on the sunny side, always on. There were songs of hope. So it's great to see you continue writing songs that no matter how tough it is, the God of the mountain is still the God of the valley, and there's still hope at the end of the rainbow.
He is the steady force. He's the only thing we can put hope.
Yeah.
And I go back to my grandpa Ellery Johnson's face. The first I heard gospel music, and when I was a kid and loved it, but the first time I ever saw it rest in somebody was my grandpa. He was a Mississippi, cotton farmer, and I loved him. And followed him home one afternoon about lunchtime so we could go in the house, have a bite of lunch. And our radio station, WHOC, always played an hour of gospel songs at the noon hour. And when he sat down after his lunch, just to close his eyes for a minute before he went to get back on the tractor and get in the hot fields, the disc jockey played a Chuck Wagon Gang song. And I saw it on his face. It was the most peaceful look, and he could just hear him tapping his brogan on the linoleum floor. You could almost hear those brass nail heads just click just a little bit. And it was that look of perfect peace and contentment and hope on his face in the middle of that day. And when it was over, he stood up and he said, that's mighty good. First two records I ever owned in my life was Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs and Johnny Cash record. The only two jobs I ever had in my life was with Lester Flatt and Johnny Cash.
And you lived next to him.
He was my next door neighbor. He was my ex-father-in-law, my ex-chief, my old mentor, my old bandmate, or my band leader. I loved him very much, and I miss him every day. Talk about the textbook guy. Talk about where so many worlds collide in the spirit and soul of one man. Johnny Cash, the thing that needs to be remembered about him that never gets talked about, let's talk about it. When he was buried with a Bible in his hand. And that is the man of God that I believe with all of my heart he wants to be remembered for. I knew it wasn't going to work out that way because I knew that they would go to that loud, crazy guy in the 60s, because that character was loud and crazy. Yeah. But he loved God, and he was a deep man of God. And probably the most meaningful recording that I ever had come across my ears and my heart when I was a young musician was Johnny Cash at Folsom Prison.
The reason gospel songs live, they are songs about life. For instance, how many times have you been in the hospital with a loved one or somebody? How's he doing? That's tough. We're just taking it one day at a time.
That's right.
One day at a time, sweet Jesus, And how many times do we reach for many things about tomorrow? I don't seem to understand. But I know who holds tomorrow. Know who holds my hand. And I love this concept in this song. In fact, I even love the ad. You're in good hands with Allstate. I love the ad. There are even better hands than Allstate. I'm not making a pitch for the insurance company now. But I do know this, when you don't know any answers, the old preacher says, I can't tell you, but I do know this. She or he is in good hands.
The greatest thing is when you have just enough experience to know and can look back and see what you've been carried through,
Sure.
and know that regardless, that you're covered and you're loved, and it's going to work out.
And that had to be a God. I call those God things when those happened. I mean,
Certainly.
they had to be a God thing.
So, and you know what? The one word we hadn't mentioned, the anointing.
Yeah.
There are songs, and then there are anointed songs. You and I have had this conversation before, and boy, you can't. And again, to the country songs, there are so many country songs that don't utter the gospel, but they're so anointed from the minute they come on.
Yeah.
But the Unseen Hand is one of those songs that's mighty special. And we did this as a result of my mama coming up to me one day going, I've never asked you to sing a song, but she handed me a Rambo's record with the Buck and Reba and Dottie singing
Yeah.
The Unseen Hand. I thought, okay, Mama, for you. You and I love songs,
Yeah.
and we love song lyrics. It did a great gift to be a songwriter.
Yep.
I cannot explain it. And Hank Williams probably said it better. A fella asked him one time, said, Hank, how do you write them old sad songs? He said, Hoss, I don't write them. I just hang on to the pen and God sends them through. Ooh. There you go. And so that's what you have in your hand there.
I went into your warehouse here a while back and saw a lot of this stuff that you have here on the set. But when I got into the Hank Williams and Johnny Cash section, first of all, I saw a picture in there of the Hank Williams funeral and two people looking in the casket. And I said, that's Hovey and Jake.
That's right. They sang at the funeral.
And I had to remember that Jake told me they sang at the Hank Williams funeral. So we kept looking further, and we come upon one that said, hear that lonesome whippoorwill in his handwriting, and come up on stuff like this. Wandered so aimless, life full of sin, I wouldn't let my poor Savior in. Then Jesus came like a stranger.
Praise the Lord. I saw the light.
In his own handwriting, I saw the light in your warehouse. Yeah. And you take that you take that whole display around the country from time to time.
It has been toured. We toured at the Tennessee State Museum and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Country Music Hall of Fame, the Gene Autry Museum. It goes out from time to time on loan, but they're precious treasures to me.
I mean, Gloria and I, when we talk about classic songs, we always come back to I'm so lonesome I could cry to say it.
The silence of a fallen star lights up a purple sky. And as I wonder where you are, I'm so lonesome
now, I think God had to be in that.
I know he was. No doubt about it.
And then here is Johnny Cash's Man in Black in his home, in his own handwriting. And then this particular one on the Holiday Inn stationery in Joplin, Missouri. But he had taken it with him to the Holy Land. Right?
Well, back to the Johnny Cash at Folsom Prison record. The next record that followed on the heels of this gargantuan success, The Man in Black finally appears, was Johnny Cash in the Holy Land. And I bet all the record executives in this time were going, what?
We got something going here.
But that's the kind of man he was. But he went to the Holy Land and took his tape recorder and walked around the Holy Land and then came back and wrote songs over there that scored with his travel log. There was a song that started it called The Land of Israel, as he said, from the top of Sinai to the shores of Galilee, all the hills and plains are home in the land of Israel. That song drew me in as a kid, just right off the bat. And that record was like a river. You just had to keep staying with it, and he took us through it. But there was one song in particular that I've always dearly loved. It was called He Turned the Water into Wine, about the miracle at Cana. Did you ever hear of a great gospel singer named Sister Rosetta Tharpe?
Oh, absolutely.
Well,
up above my head.
That's her.
There's music in the area. I know her.
And she played an electric guitar, tuned it way down.
Yeah.
And there was such a thin line. You talk about a thin line between country music and gospel. On her side of the line, there was a mighty thin line between rock and roll and gospel music.
Oh, yeah.
But she could stir up the church house. I wish I could have seen her, but I hear records when I close my eyes and I see her. But 99 and a Half Won't Do is one of those old spirituals that just, it needed some updating and some rhythm to it. So we just tried to go to Sister Rosetta's arrangement and hang on for dear life. There's a song on this collection called Don't Leave Home Without Jesus. And I'm going to back you up for just a little bit. I don't know if you remember this. When I was first starting the superlatives and had first kind of headed off into a different direction, Connie and I came to visit you
Yeah, you did.
in Indiana. And we spent the day and you shared knowledge and wisdom and
And history. Yeah.
and we played songs and records. But we talked about television and how much I love television. So when this show first started, you know how it is when you're trying to establish something new. And somebody asked me not long ago, said, when did you know the show was working? I said, it was on the courthouse square of a Virginia town on July the 4th, right into the first season. And I don't know if you remember the movie Cool Hand Luke,
Yes.
Paul Newman.
Yeah.
He was in prison, and there was a scene where the warden comes and gets him, and or one of the trustees says, your mama's out here. And they brought his mother in the back of a truck because she was passing away, and she wanted to say bye to her boy in jail, Paul Newman. So there was a knock on the bus door, and this guy says, is that Buddy Holly-looking feller with you? I said, yeah. And he says, my mama is passing away. She maybe has 2 or 3 days to live, and she's parked in that car right over there, and she wants to just look at that feller before she leaves the earth. And I went, cuz, get your hat. He said, what are we going to do? I said, we're on a mission. Come on. And the lady just wanted to touch Kenny, and people are fascinated by Cousin Kenny. And he came up with this song, Don't Leave Home Without Jesus, Take Him Everywhere You Go.
Bill Monroe, he was the man for many, many years, right?
Rosine, Kentucky. Connie always has said, you know, God is a God of preparation. And I believe that because I look back on the people that went on to become, you know, major figures in my life, that when I was a little boy, I either loved their music or them as people. And one of the first people, you know, going back to that old show that we saw in Jackson, Alabama with Bill Monroe, that night I bought his album, I Saw the Light. He looked at me, he said, you play music, boy? And I said, yes, sir, I want to play the mandolin like you. And he reached in his pocket and gave me his mandolin pick. And I carried that to school every day. It was like having kryptonite in my pocket. Yeah. I mean, I felt special. But that old fellow went on to mean a lot to me. And the thing I've noticed about your homecoming videos, especially the very first one I saw, I thought, that man is following his heart, standing up for the people and the culture that he loves and believes in, and he may be the only man on earth that gets it except for the people. And Monroe was one of those people, as he got older, he always had disciples that loved him musically, but Ricky Skaggs was kind of his shepherd.
Finally, we're going to pretty this set up a little bit, right?
We need the help.
Miss Connie, how you doing, hon?
I'm doing great.
You still cooking?
Yeah, still cooking.
If you're ever visiting Nashville and you're hungry, what's your address? You can slip
Yeah, well.
the phone number is this
615.
This lady is a cook. Laura and I came out to the house there. Had a wonderful time.
That was that day we walked out in the yard and they had your songs playing at the First Baptist Church. Did you remember that?
I do.
We cued them. We did it on
I
purpose.
know. I said, you ought to be ashamed.
I said, let's see if we can intimidate Marty. Okay.
Bill's coming out. Cue it. That's it.
But it was fun visiting with you. My brother was the first one who told me about you. He had been at a radio or I think a television station. He was in a quartet over in Ohio.
Yes.
He said, boy, this gal can belt it. And it wasn't long after that, the RCA Victor record. What was the title of your first
Once
record?
a day.
Once a day. She was on her way.
And I tell you what, there's a recording. Remember the little Wallensack tape recorders?
Yeah.
Of her when she was a housewife up in Ohio, before Nashville was even thought about.
Yeah.
Of her just sitting at the kitchen table playing her guitar and singing. And I promise you, it's like, wow, when I hear it now, I go, that's one of those once in a lifetime kind of voices. It was awesome. She's pretty good.
Yeah.
Thanks,
She's pretty
honey.
good. And a great marriage, and you're having a great time in life. Do you do many dates together, or is she pretty much, you're out by yourself most of the time when you're with
Every
the kids?
now and then we have the privilege of playing with her and her band, the Sundowners. And it's a wonderful night when it does happen.
Yeah.
But not a whole lot, but it's,
No,
it's a
most of the
treat.
time one bus goes one way and one goes the other.
Well, and if you had your choice of being that sweet thing, you would go with those ugly boys. Marty.
What's wrong? I need help. I need help.
Except, I tell Gloria the same thing. I said, honey, I know you don't understand this, but there's something about 4-part male harmony. That is very, very, very special.
Well, the good part about it is I was raised in band life, and
Yeah.
so was she. So Connie understands it, and that's a
band.
great thing. That's a
Yeah.
great thing. I love the band. I love being in the band.
The band. And you love gospel music too.
Yes, I do. I love the Lord.
I know you do. I remember the first time I heard you sing "How Great Thou Art." My man, you raised the roof on it. You have to have a range to sing that song.
I just holler mostly.
But it's good singing. How is it living with this character?
It's wonderful and it's never boring.
It's never boring. That's what I tell Gloria a lot of times because she is such an academic. And had she not married me, she would have probably married a college professor and been teaching English, probably at Yale or Harvard somewhere. But I tell her, but it wouldn't be nearly as exciting as with this crazy musician.
Isn't it a great life?
It really
I love
is.
this life.
And Gloria and I often say this, to be at this stage of our lives, doing what we've always loved to do all of our lives, and still having fun. And the best part about it, there are still people who love what we do and will buy a ticket to come out and hear what we do.
It's wonderful.
That's not bad, is it?
Well, Connie's much more of a balanced person. I mean, family is if she were being given the Queen of the World award by whoever, and on the way to the podium, if she got a call that one of the kids had the flu and needed mama, the award would have to wait. Now that's Connie.
I know.
And singing's out there somewhere.
Yeah.
But I'm totally the opposite. I'm a nut, career-driven nut, and just give me one more song, give me one more show. But Connie brings a wonderful balance to my life. She does.
We did one of the earlier videos, I think it's called Gospel Bluegrass. Been very popular. We've run that many times on public television. That crosses all different kinds of music tastes.
Well, it does.
And, one night they'll run classical, the next night here's all this acoustic stuff.
Sure.
And I will never forget it, and I don't even know how we got up there, but we got smack dab in the middle. Would it be the Blue Ridge or Appalachian?
Well, it's Poor Valley, Virginia, right out of Bristol, Tennessee, right on the kind of Tennessee-Virginia line up there. Is a mighty special place when it comes to talking about country music. I think when you and I originally talked about doing that video, I said, Bill, let me take you back to Genesis.
Oh, yeah.
And over in Bristol, Tennessee in 1927, that was the big bang of commercial country music. Ralph Peer came to town and he sent scouts out to put the word out in the paper, advertising hillbilly singers, gospel singers, fiddle players, banjo players. Just bring your talent to the microphone. And he set a microphone up for RCA Victor Records at a furniture store in Bristol, Tennessee. Out of that week, he got what is now known as the Bristol Sessions, but the absolute superstars of the Bristol Sessions was Jimmie Rodgers, the father of country music, and the Carter family, the first family of country music. And to go back, it's a wonderful thing to know, to be a part of what's going on in country music to the moment. But it is a wonderful thing to be able to go all the way back to the Carter fold this very day. It's still alive and well every day, and every Saturday night they still play music up there.
Were you at George Jones's funeral?
We were.
Was that a beautiful service?
I loved the Oak Ridge Boys that day. Dwayne Allen and those boys stepped out there and took care of business. I loved it. I really did.
What was the tune they sang? I forget right now.
Did they do Farther Along?
I think they did.
They did. Now, let me tell you, right over here sits George Jones. He always said it very publicly. Connie Smith was his favorite
He
female
was my
country singer.
favorite.
And he was your favorite, right? And you talk about the anointing. He could sing any song, man, whether it was country, but it came from an awesome place, didn't it? Yeah. It was a deep, deep place.
He was so real.
Gloria wasn't with me. I was there with Larry. And she said, how was it, honey? And I said, it was about grace. It was about redemption. It's about hope. It's about the stuff that we sing about all the time. And it was just so great to see it. And his pastor who got up said, if you're wondering about George, he's all right. He loved that young pastor. Remember?
Yeah.
he had facial hair and all this kind of stuff. And George said, I never saw a preacher look like that before. but wasn't that a wonderful relationship?
and I don't think Nancy would mind me telling this after it all settled down. Nancy Jones and I spoke one day, and I said, "Tell me about the last day." She said, "Listen, he hadn't spoke in a long time." I said, all of a sudden, like just a few minutes before he passed away, she said, he opened his eyes and he said, "Hi, I'm George Jones, and I've been looking for you," and stuck out his hand. And said a few minutes later, he was gone. So he saw it. Isn't that great?
He knew about forgiveness.
Oh.
We all need forgiveness from time to time, don't we?